All right, so the NFL season's about to wrap up. We got the Super Bowl coming on Sunday, which means we are full steam ahead into Dynasty Fantasy Football. And I've got good news, I got bad news. One, now is the time where everything's up in flux. There's so many moving parts, right? People have a ton of rookie picks, but they're kind of unfamiliar with the actual class. Thus, when they release those picks or they trade them away or they trade players away without knowing free agency and what happens in the draft, you get a lot of good value. So I'm going to give you 7 dudes in today's video that I think are the elite buys in Dynasty Fantasy Football. So if you're watching a fantasy football video right now, it probably means that you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, and I've got wonderful news for you. We have literally just launched a Dynasty-only fantasy football channel, okay? So BDGE, this current channel you're watching on, might be the redraft channel. It'll only be redraft and season-long stuff from now onward. We have the Dynasty only specific channel, which you should also subscribe to, which is linked down below. You will be getting 5 videos a week from myself, and we have 2 other creators coming on who are fantastic creators in the Dynasty space. We'll be doing groups together. They will be doing individual videos. So if you're watching this on the redraft channel, the Dynasty videos will go away in 3 weeks time, okay? We will only be posting them over there, but we want to continue posting them on here for now, just to let you guys know that we have the Dynasty channel. So head over there, subscribe, and watch over there. Share with your friends, share with whoever. We're going to be helping you guys set up Dynasty leagues. We're going to be helping you guys join Dynasty leagues. If you are new to the space, if you are a vet to the space, don't worry. We're going to be hitting you with that analysis as well. So go subscribe to that channel, please. That would mean the world to me. But you guys are not here to listen to me yap about that channel. You're here to listen to me yap about the best buys in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And y'all know what we got to do first is tuck the shirt in. First dude up on this list is someone who had a relatively traumatic fall off of a year, and I will put that on the back of just saying the entire team imploded this year. I don't know if anyone had a more disappointing year than this team, and that is the New York Giants, specifically referring to Daniel Jones, the quarterback. Now, everybody who plays in Dynasty, for the most part, plays in Superflex. And if you go to keeptradecut.com right now, Daniel Jones is valued as the quarterback 25. We're talking about a QB3 for a man that 2 years ago posted a top 12 fantasy season and secured a 4-year, $160 million contract extension. This man is 26 years old. He is the perfect quarterback 2 in Dynasty right now that you are getting for insane prices. When I look at the other quarterbacks on Keep Trade Cut around where he is valued, you have Geno Smith and Sam Howell and the Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield and stuff like that. When push comes to shove, there are not a lot of guys on this list that I'm taking over him straight up. Like, obviously, I'm going to take Bryce Young, Deshaun Watson, maybe a couple other guys, depending on where Baker's contract ends up landing. But Jones is like the perfect balance of weekly upside, has the contract extension, youth. And while the Giants' outlook is disgusting at the moment, if you look at pretty much every mock draft, they're picking at number 6 in the NFL draft this year, and they have him taking a wide receiver at the pick, either Rome or Malik Neighbors there, which would be a massive upgrade to this wide receiver group. Or they can go back to drafting O-linemen in the top 10, which they fucking so badly need. I was looking at some pass rush numbers, and they were by far and away the worst pass blocking offensive line in the NFL last year. It was not close. That column all the way to the right that you see, 18.06%, is pressure on pass rush over expectation. So the amount of times, the rate in which the quarterback in the Giants' backfield was pressured over when they should have been was 18%. By far and away, number 1 in the NFL. The next closest team was at 9%. So 2 times as much. Everybody else was in like the 3 to 9%. They were up at 18%, okay? So it just can't get any worse there. They were banged up on the offensive line. Some of their first-round picks obviously busted in major ways. It just can't get worse. That's what we're really getting at here. We have Darren Waller, who was their big contract extension last year. Didn't really work out this year, but if he's back and healthy, that's obviously a major upgrade, especially if he can be the 2 to whoever they drafted number 6. Jalen Hyatt should be a really nice deep field stretcher for them coming into his second year. He had some big plays that I think kind of accentuated the offense and makes me hopeful for what he can be in the future. And I just look at where he's valued in keep trade cut in terms of like the actual value itself, Daniel Jones's value right now is the 207. I would give up the 207, 208, 206 in a heartbeat to get this man on my roster. No one wants a piece of him. Guys, he's not like getting cut. They're not moving away from Daniel Jones, okay? So Daniel Jones is the premier quarterback target in Superflex Dynasty startup drafts, but also trade targets. Second dude up on this list, we have Javonte Williams, the running back for the Denver Broncos. Right now, the 202 will get you Javonte Williams, which I would give up in a heartbeat. You've got to remember just how young Javonte Williams came into the league. He was the youngest running back in that draft class, and he is 23 years old right now. When you look at the rookies from last year, Zach Charbonnet is 23. Roshan Johnson is 23. His backfield mate, Jaleel McLaughlin, also 23. He is a full year younger than guys like Brian Robinson. Last year, I wanted nothing to do with Javonte Williams coming into the year. I projected him to have a bad year and knew that I was going to be in on him the following year. The dude was like 7 months off of an ACL tear. And all offseason, everyone was like, he's 100%. He's good to go. He's ready to go. And they treated him like they gave him touch workload as if he was 100% healthy, but he did not play like he was. And if you look at just some of the deeper numbers about why his efficiency numbers were low, obviously he did not have the explosion and the breakaway type of stuff that he normally had prior to the ACL tear. He had the 5th highest average defenders in the box, the 7th most stacked boxes against him. He is just a year removed from literally being a top 3. He was valued as a top 3 dynasty running back for basically a year straight on keep trade cut. And I know these things fluctuate and move drastically, but the fact that he has dropped so heavily to the point where you could trade the 201, the 202, the 203 for Javonte Williams is something I would do right away, because the man is still 23 years old. It's not like he had the ACL tear and now he's waking up on the post part of that at 25, 26, 27 when we're like hoping he gets a second contract. The man's still in his prime. You just got to look at the dudes 2 years removed from the ACL tears, the Dalvin Cooks, the Saquon Barkleys, about to be Breece Halls. That's when they explode. So you let him spin this upcoming year in on Javonte. Let's pull it back to a less valuable running back, and that is Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. He is currently the RB37 in Dynasty. Him and Mixon, everyone's going to talk about like, okay, Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle are now the new Tony Pollard and Zeke. Chase Brown and Joe Mixon are going to be the new Zeke and Tony Pollard for the next however many years Joe Mixon is on the team. When you look at Chase Brown's just pure stature, athleticism, sure, he was a 5th-round pick and he's a little bit older, but he's 5'10", 210 pounds. Look at his speed. 4.43 for someone that size. His burst score, he is strong. He could do it all. He was a really good pass catcher for them, making explosive plays down the stretch in the middle of the year. Anytime they put him on the field, he became like a Jaylen Warren type, where you saw him play and you saw him relative to the guy he was playing next to, the Najee Harris and Joe Mixon, and you're like, how do you possibly keep this type of explosion off the field? Those are the narratives that are going to happen. Yeah, I compared him to Tony Pollard and Zeke. You can also compare him to Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. And you look at Tony Pollard, his ascension. He got up to the RB5 in Dynasty last summer at 26 years old, which was always dumb as shit, because a back that's 26 years old with no second contract is insanely risky in Dynasty. But Chase Brown is 23. And obviously Pollard's value got up to that level because of his production that he actually put onto the table, while Chase Brown still needs to do that. But a lot of the time in Dynasty, the market hype outweighs actual production. People make these stories up in their head about what a guy can be, and then eventually that starts to skew over to what their trade value is in the actual market. So Joe Mixon at this point is a sum of his parts running back who he can do it all, but he doesn't do anything great. I think he's like more a player that just works well on a football team. I mean, he has had 2 100-yard rushing games over his last 36 regular season games, despite seeing 18 or more carries 12 times in that span. It's bad. And when you look at his contract, his cap hit next year, which was already restructured last year because they're like, you're not worth the money that we're actually paying you, is $9 million, and they could save $6 million by moving on to him prior to March 16th. As soon as March 16th hits, he is guaranteed $3 million of a roster bonus. So that will kind of be the date to look on. Do I think they move on with Joe Mixon completely? No, I don't, but there's going to be some movement in that backfield. Overall, I just think Chase Brown's value is going to go in the same exact direction as the Tony Pollard, the Jaylen Warren, where the more we see him, the more people are going to start chirping about how he needs to be on the field more. And it doesn't matter in real life if they put him on the field more, as long as like Twitter keeps yelling about it, his value in dynasty markets is going to go up and up and up and up. And the other thing I love about him is that this offense, the reason that you want to attach yourself to an offense like this is because it has so much upside and stability. Like Joe Burrow is locked in under contract, which means that offense is going to have stability for the next, 5-ish years, whatever it is, throughout Chase Brown's entire rookie contract. So if you can give up an early third for Chase Brown, I would do that in a second. The last younger running back we will talk about before we switch over to the wide receivers. And again, don't forget the Dynasty channels on this channel. If you're watching on the regular redraft channel that has, 120,000 subs, are going to be going away in a couple weeks. So if you want Dynasty only chatter, make sure you subscribe to the Dynasty only channel. First link in the description down below. We want to get to 1,000 by the end of this week. That would be, I would love you for that. Now, y'all know I loves me some Kendre Miller, the running back for the New Orleans Saints. His current keep trade cut value is the running back 34. Now, his season was plagued from the start. He had knee injuries. He had hamstring injuries. Like, as soon as a rookie starts having injuries in the summer, in the beginning of the year, it is so hard to come back from that. And the problem was, like, when he had his injuries and missed time, it was when Kamara was out. So if Kamara missed those 3 games and Kendre was healthy, he would have got a nice workload to actually show what he could do on the field. Unfortunately, that did not happen. But I just need to look back at how I felt about him coming out of TCU. And he was, like, let's not forget how good he was coming out as a prospect. He was one of the best running backs in college football from last year's draft class. I mean, he had day 2 capital. He was the 4th running back off the board. It went Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet, Kendre Miller. And he was top 5 in almost every tackle-breaking metric coming out. You want to talk about useless? How about Jamal Williams? Like, Jamal Williams was so useless for the Saints offense, man. I don't know what they're going to do in the backfield. And here's like really the tough part to kind of decipher is Alvin Kamara, right? Like, there's a really good chance he is back next year because his contract kind of just says that he's going to be back next year. They wouldn't save a lot of money by cutting him. And in fact, they would lose a lot of money. They're not saving a lot of like dead cap money from getting rid of Alvin Kamara. So there's a very good chance he is still in the picture for them next year. But let's not mix up. Let's not make a cocktail here about Alvin Kamara catching 42 dump offs a game to him actually being good last year, because he was not. When I started diving into the actual numbers of him being a running back, this is what we found. His true yards per carry, his juke rate, his yards after contact per attempt, his avoided tackles per attempt, his overall elusiveness rating, his breakaway run rate, all of those metrics ranked outside of the top 40 running backs. I don't know that Alvin Kamara has the juice anymore. I don't know that he's a great runner anymore. Is he still a great pass catcher? Of course. But Kendre Miller is the solution to that problem. They need a really good running back. They need a dude who can make big plays. They need a dude who is elusive. They need a dude who's got juice and is young. That's Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller's game is not pass catching. That is Kamara, right? That's why I think this tandem can be so good together if they utilize him that way. They tried to do it with Jamal Williams. I don't think he is the answer, right? He had the big season in Detroit where he just fucking plunged in from the 1-yard line, happened over and over and over and over again, which conflated the fact that he was good. Not good, just a thumper. Kendre Miller is more than a thumper. He is a really, really elusive, tackle-breaking, tough to get down, first and second down back, maybe goal line back. So I think he fits in with Kamara being there for one more year perfectly in the Saints offense. So huge fan of Kendre Miller. What else I'm a huge fan of is Dynasty veteran wide receivers. Nobody likes the 25, 26, 27-year-olds. Everyone likes the 22, 23, 24 shiny new objects, but I guarantee you the best value in startup drafts as well as in trade value is getting the 26, 27-year-old 25 to 27-year-old wide receivers who still have 2 to 3 years in their prime that get you 11, 12, 13 PPR points per game that you can put into your second flex spot, all right? Like this summer I did a startup draft, which you'll hear me talk about a few times this week if you're on the Dynasty channel, and it was a super flex startup, so I went quarterback and running back heavy early on, which is not something I typically suggest to do, but the way that the values work with wide receivers, and again, this was prior to this year, so we're talking about last July, last August, my wide receivers ended up being DK Metcalf, Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, drafted Jaden Reed and Tank Dell later. So you're talking about all those dudes who are like 25, 26, 27 that I got in the 5th, 6th, 7th round ended up being incredible values and easily starters for my wide receivers, obviously, put on top of like the quarterbacks, running backs I went early. That I think is a great strategy in Dynasty, which is why I would love to trade for Jakobi Meyers, the wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders. He is 27, which is the age that literally nobody in Dynasty wants to trade for a player. But again, you have 2 to 3 good years of production left that he is a set and forget flex play. He was literally awesome last year before Jimmy G got hurt/bench. If you look at his splits, like look at the splits on the left side, 18 PPR fantasy points per game. And it wasn't just off touchdowns. Sure, he was scoring a lot of touchdowns, but he was averaging nearly 64 yards per game, 7.5 targets, over 5 receptions per game. And even without touchdowns, say he scored 0 touchdowns in that span, again, just based off those numbers, you're looking at about 12 PPR fantasy points. And let's be real here, like as cool of a story as Aiden O'Connell was, he ain't it for the Raiders. He is not their starting quarterback. So when I'm looking at Jakobi Meyers, I'm looking at a dude that, you know, you're at a late second round pick, you're like hoping that you hit on a guy that might score you 10 to 11 PPR fantasy points per game, when I am confident that Jakobi Meyers will do that for you for the next 2 to 3 years, okay? Go flip a late second. Go flip, fuck it. You know what you can do without a doubt and probably add something on top of it? Go flip Jerry Jeudy for Jakobi Meyers right now, and I guarantee you'll be happy over the next year and 2 years, and you could probably throw like a third on top of that to get Jakobi Meyers for Jerry Jeudy. So thank me afterwards. I got 2 more that we'll rip through quickly. You know, I have an infatuation with Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I don't know if I want to put my neck out on the line for it. He was a third-round pick that went super under the radar because most people don't really know him from college because he dealt with a ton of injuries. He ended up winning the starting role immediately out there, ran a ton of routes, didn't put up a ton of production. Obviously, the Cardinals' offense was extremely up and down, extremely volatile, especially in the passing game with Dobbs and then Kyler Murray coming back later in the season. He had a really nice stretch before getting hurt and missing 4 to 5 games in the middle of the season. I look at Hollywood. He's an unrestricted free agent. I will say the thing that probably hurts him the most, which if Hollywood leaves, not a big deal. He could be a solid wide receiver too, because right now his keep trade cut value is like wide receiver 53. So it's not like you're expecting wide receiver 1 numbers, but there's a really good chance Arizona ends up being the team that lands a Marvin Harrison, or if somehow they don't get him, you know, again, a Rome or a Malik Neighbors in this class. But last year, Michael Wilson averaged 15.5 yards per reception, 9.1 yards per target, both really, really solid numbers. It's possible we're reaching here. I really hope Matt Harmon does a reception perception profile on Michael Wilson to see how his route running was last year. That would be very appreciated, Matt. So if you watch these, get it the fuck done. So Michael Wilson is number 6. Moving on to numero 7. And if you've got to this point, I love you. Make sure you go down below and hit the button that looks like this. Subscribe to both this channel and the Dynasty channel, because we'll be doing fantasy content throughout the offseason for this channel as well. But ton of rookie, Dynasty, all that kind of stuff. Last guy up on this list is Tucker Kraft, the tight end for the Green Bay Packers. And you might think, like, why the fuck would I trade for Tucker Kraft when Luke Musgrave is the starting tight end? When I watched film on both these guys last year coming into the season, before the actual season started, I came away from the film thinking that Tucker Kraft was actually a better fit and a better player than Luke Musgrave. Musgrave, more athletic for sure, but he reminded me more of Mike Gesicki than he did of a really high athletic, high production type of tight end. It was all bark, no bite. So they both went in the draft class, obviously, right? It was Luke Musgrave round 2, Tucker Kraft round 3. So one after the other. They told you how they felt about them, obviously going Musgrave before Tucker Kraft, but they didn't draft Tucker Kraft to be some like blocking tight end, right? Kraft himself is plenty athletic with plenty size, 6'5", 254, 4.69 40-yard dash, best comp to Logan Thomas. And right now, you can get Tucker Kraft outside of the top 20 Dynasty tight end. Through their rookie years, Kraft ended up averaging more yards per reception, had more touchdowns, higher fantasy points per game. Musgrave had a single game of more than 52 yards with 1 touchdown through 10 games. Obviously, he was a starter for the 10 games, got hurt, missed a lot of time until the end of the season, the playoffs, when he came back. And I think most people will only attribute Kraft's success to Musgrave being out. But when Musgrave was on the field compared to when Kraft was on the field, Kraft performed better in that same role. We can keep going back to the draft capital, but need I remind you, the year that Mark Andrews was a 3rd-round pick for the Baltimore Ravens, not only did they take Lamar Jackson in the 1st round, but they also drafted Hayden Hurst in the 1st round. So they went Hurst in the 1st and then Mark Andrews in the 3rd. You know how many rookie drafts probably took Hayden Hurst over Mark Andrews? All of them. And we talk about when Musgrave finally returned this year. Obviously, he was coming back from an injury. I didn't expect a full snap participation type of role for him immediately. In week 18, he ran 18% of the routes. Okay, so you say first week back. Wild card, 38% of the routes, while Tucker Kraft ran 67% of routes. Conference championship, Musgrave back down to 37% of the routes, while Tucker Kraft was up at 77% of the routes. I'm just saying there is a non-zero chance that Tucker Kraft ends up being the better tight end in this system, who's valued like 10 spots lower than Luke Musgrave. And in tight end premiums, you could flip a shit pick for Tucker Kraft right now with someone that I think is attaching himself to a high upside offense that's only continued to get better and better and better and better. You know what else is only going to get better and better and better and better? Our Dynasty channel. So go subscribe there. If you enjoyed the video, again, hit the button that looks like this. Put the D in the subscribe button. Link down below. Dynasty coming at you 5 days a week. I love you. Mwah.